Cool. All right, so the stream should be starting. Yep. My Twitch started. And YouTube is up too. That's great. Cool. So, all right. Let me start playing the video.
Social anxiety and lack of social ability. Here's the key thing. Don't let the social anxiety trick you into thinking that you're worse than anyone. It's lying. And it was like, I would be in a conversation, and it was like, in the conversation, I would look out into the world, and I just saw mirrors. I think anxious people, if they work through their anxiety, become some of the most brave people on the planet. I don't know if it's better to say you should feel less. What we should actually be saying is, how do we get you to be more brave? I promise you that if you have a high level of anxiety, you are braver than you know you are. Who here has social anxiety? So
give me
about
1
it.
second.
We're going to talk about it at a
I need
level,
to restart.
Also, we can just talk about it at a
Stream Deck.
an emotional level, essentially.
I can't hear a thing right now.
Anxiety.
I don't know what's going on.
For your guys' background, for me with social anxiety, I both had basically diagnosable social anxiety. I was working with a psychologist at the time who erred away from diagnosis in general, which is totally fine. But I basically hit the clinical threshold kind of across the board. I had social anxiety in multiple different environments as well, so it really affected me in peer-to-peer interactions. And that was kind of the most where it affected me was peer-to-peer.
Okay, so I gotta stop for a second just because I hate this. And it all disappeared. Oh boy. Oh wait, it's back. It's back again, guys. Come on, open up. I don't need that open right now. My stream deck is being stupid. Come on. Do the thing. It won't do the thing. Open. Are you serious? I go live. I don't even know. Okay, so my audio's still coming through here. So my wavelength is still working. It's just the stream deck that's being stupid. Everything's running a little bit slow. But I can't alter the levels. I mean, I can alter it individually. I mean, I guess I can do it from here. So we're gonna just...
interactions. So as you can imagine, work, school.
So if I'm talking
kind of everything.
everything,
As a young adult, that's
hear me
almost everything. The only areas where it wasn't an issue is if there was a clear power dynamic at play, it felt like I knew the social script. So if I was talking with an authority, I was actually pretty good. Or if I was an authority of somebody else, I was comfortable. Also, weird thing during my social anxiety, I still really enjoyed public speaking, which a lot of social anxiety will be. There's a specifier called public speaking. Like it's a specifier of public speaking.
So with this, I can kind of...
I distinctly didn't have that one. Where's the line drawn on anxieties and social anxieties? Great question. That's where we're going to actually start. Let's talk about anxiety first. So anxiety is, as you guys know, it's an emotion. It's like I heard
Well,
a
it looks like we're not gonna have
analytic therapist by the name of Jonathan Shedler.
the Stream Deck controls
DC, thank you.
because
He does
it's
a
being
video where he talks actually about anxiety and depression
really,
being like
really
fevers
stupid.
of mental illness, where they're more so markers and symptomology of something being wrong, but they're
Oh,
not
boy.
exactly like clear, like diagnostically clear things as to what's going wrong. So it's really important to understand that when we talk about anxiety, I want to talk about it at a scientific level, but before I get into that, I think something that we always miss when we talk about mental health conditions is the emotions behind it.
oh
Right?
boy,
For
it
a
finally
lot
opened
of
up.
people,
And I think
anxiety
it's
is
causing it to go kind of
a
crazy.
deeply lived
Okay.
experience. And so I wanted to show you how artists conveyed that lived experience. So I looked up a bunch of artwork done by
Jesus.
a bunch of people on Pinterest to convey anxiety. And so some of this is social anxiety focused, as you'll kind of notice, and some is just anxiety. But I think it's really important to remember the human aspect of anxiety, which is suffering. It is distress. It is being uncomfortable in your own skin, never feeling at peace, constantly feeling like this gas on running from sensation. Not a running to, not a goal-oriented behavior, but a running from. It can be
True.
crippling. School.
Oh man. Yep. Yeah, those pictures pretty spot on describe. Those pretty much describe what anxiety feels like. I don't know so much about the third one. That's iffy to me.
So,
First one,
as you can
very
kind of
much
tell
so.
from the images that I've shown here, it's not always
Actually.
cute. It's not romantic. It is the experience of extreme derision and upset with no clear answer forward.
We're gonna skip ahead because I already saw this
To
part.
break this. So the best way to break this pattern is, well, we don't want to do this because we don't want to like have somebody feel temporary relief from avoiding and then like cause them like, yeah, basically not give them the actual like release. So this is the issue with anxiety, is there's the reinforcing loop of the metacognitions and there's a reinforcing loop of the behaviors themselves. So in the case of anxiety, you're going to avoid situations that
Now I'm gonna
provoke fear,
research.
right? So a highly socially
Let's
anxious
start one of
person
these.
is probably not like running to go to a whole bunch of like house parties where they know no one, right? They're more likely to be like invited and bail at the last minute because their anxiety gets too great. And here's the trick, right? So you're the socially
Yep,
anxious
that's
person.
me.
You've got a
That's
party
me.
planned. You committed to going with
Oh,
your
boy.
friend, but your friend is the only person you know. And then an hour before, you're feeling sick. You're just like, everything in your soul is like, God, I don't want to go. Everything in you is like, I don't wanna
Perfectionism,
go.
procrastinator, shy,
And then you
nervous,
cancel
working
last minute
out.
on your friend. You're like,
That's
I'm
me.
sorry, I'm just feeling really sick, which
Avoiding
is a lie.
situations
You
that
are
provoke
feeling
fear.
sick. You're not sick, but you are feeling sick.
Anknesam.
And
Why
your
is
friend's like,
everything
no worries, I'm
Anknesam?
kind of tired tonight too. Let's just catch something later, right? And your immediate response is, yes, right? Fucking yes. Okay, that immediate relief is understandable. It's very human, and it's reinforcing the social anxiety, unfortunately. So, other ways that it can express would be obviously breaking eye contact. However, we also have certain kind of social related disorders like autism can cause issues where people have a hard time with eye contact as well. And it's not clear whether that's from anxiety or other things because there's kind of some eye tracking and that they in general have a hard time attending to eyes. Can cause procrastination. It can cause perfectionism. You're unable to sit still. You're snapping at others. You can be super fidgety, right? Kind of the obvious sides. I mean, we kind of know culturally what to look for in anxiety, right? Like the person who's like
I
this
think we're going to stop.
is anxious, most likely.
I'm stopping
right?
the Twitch
They
stream
might have to
because
shit really bad. It might not be anxiety, but most of us are gonna read that as anxiety. Yeah, that moment where you get off that look feels insanely good. Absolutely. The problem is that it's reinforcing the anxiety. Okay. So, what is anxiety? Anxiety is anticipation.
Okay,
of
so this is
future
bad.
Threat. right? So if you guys know what this is from Stranger Things.
Oh, crap. I did the wrong thing.
I think that this image is a great example of what anxiety feels like, at least for me. Anxiety feels like when you close your eyes, you can see the monster off in the clouds. You don't know when it's going to hit. You don't know why or how or what it's going to look like.
Okay, so this is very
It's
bad.
going to be bad, and you want to put it off for as long as possible. Dread, yes. So it's really important to understand because fear and anxiety are not precisely the same thing, for the most part. There's different types, like I mentioned. There's generalized anxiety disorder. There is specific. So
Oh no, this is very bad.
there's a type of thing called agphobia.
My inputs are being.
I used to fear the fear.
What the heck is going on?
The phobophobia, being afraid of being afraid. Yeah. And then social phobia, which is or social anxiety disorder. It was previously in the past called social phobia disorder as well.
What is happening?
Something called agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is a type of phobia. It's a fear of basically leaving your house. It's a couple of different types of fears lumped into one. So it could be a fear of leaving your house. It could be a fear of open spaces or public spaces.
What is happening?
It could be a fear of observation or a fear of being in a public space that you cannot escape from. A lot of people with agoraphobia have a mixture of all of these fears, but some people will have only one or two of them. Some people are afraid of being in lines, stuff like that. But it's in general about being in a public space or away from your domicile, like your home.
Yeah, I'm getting drop frames and everything.
Okay, so as I talked about, we have the avoidance trap. I've already talked about this, so I'll cover it. So let's talk about the myth of normal. I want to bring this up because this is
mad cow disorder.
It's an important thing to remember in all this. So when we're looking at things like a diagnosis or a mental health disorder, we have to remember that
he's doing that, like this taking
mental health
forever.
behaviors occurring along a spectrum, right? So it's not like there's this trigger where magically one day you're not anxious and now you have an anxiety disorder and there's like no space in between that. It's just like you like wake up. I mean, that can literally happen. But most people experience most things, especially mental health stuff, along a spectrum of experience, right? With some people being at this extreme end of experiencing almost no anxiety most of the time.
We're going to see how well I know this game now.
Of anxiety some of the time. And then when we're getting towards that end of the other end of the spectrum where we're having lots of anxiety almost all the time, there's basically, fundamentally, it's not...
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Everything is like super slow.
Draw the line.
Everything is like all my inputs are coming in slow.
We draw a line at some point.
This is wild.
Symptomology over this line is now a diagnosis, and symptomology behind this line is just considered subclinical experiences, right? But this is where Eric Fromm and other kind of psychiatrists, even the neurodivergence literature in general, kind of has this argument about the myth of normal, which is the argument that basically, like, there's no such thing as normal. Everything about, like, excessive is all normative based, and the question is whether...
Oh my God, this is terrible.
Is a statistical finding. Normal doesn't truly exist. There is no person who is going to have precisely 2.5 children in America, right? It's a
okay, so we might have to stop this video. I think... Let's try that. What the heck is going on? Half of my hits aren't even registering. What the... Come on. Maybe it's just because the person I'm playing, I don't know. Maybe it's my connection or something. It can't even be that because my whole entire like computer was freaking out. Something kept going off and on. Like, I'm gonna get you, bro. Nope, you ain't getting me.
I'm gonna end this. This looks useful. I'll just take it. Weapons getting dull.
Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to try to play the video again.
Average of a conglomerate, but that means then that normatives are harder to apply to an individual. So this is why I brought up that anxiety that is proportionate to the event that you're experiencing, right? So if you're pretty anxious because there's a final coming up and it's worth 30% of your grade and you're not feeling good about it and you don't have time to study and you're burnt out, it's decently understandable to be anxious about it, right? This is why I offer a lot of critiques, for example, against something like
What?
university, because I think university is a necessary recipe for anxiety disorders.
Yeah, so
you
it
know,
seems
when all these
like the pop out, the video
students are
pop out
complaining
is
about
going
attention and
to.
concentration issues. I'm not shocked. I mean, it's
I'm
a
gonna have
breeding
to
place
choose
for
a different way to
anxieties.
show that.
It should be, and it's at the end of a semester when you're fucking exhausted. And bearing in mind, it's always the class that's the worst to study for that is on the same day as some other dumbass class that you like didn't pay a close enough attention to. So you got to study for both, and they're on the same day. And by the time you're writing a second, you're so tired. Yeah.
Of course, I'm getting.
So I put this in here to basically say the myth of normal is about the subclinical experience, which is to say, when somebody, for example, this is why the self-ID stuff is tricky, because if you self-ID symptomology, like I'm experiencing feelings of social
Yeah, we're gonna listen to the
anxiety,
background.
I think that that's not just reasonable. I think it's good to do. I think it's really good to identify
I'm probably
your
gonna
symptom,
restart
issues
this
that you
stream
should
because this
diagnose
is
yourself with a
crazy.
disorder, or because it's this line in this threshold that I would argue.
Like, I can't even get my charge shots off because it's like
Because there's a specific purpose behind the diagnostic label that is even being argued. But
It's like
everyone will experience feelings of social
the
anxiety.
charge-
Everyone will
the
experience
charge
feelings of
slashes
depression.
aren't like
Everyone will experience
are
feelings
taking
of
forever to
anxiety,
actually
broad
go
general
off. Like,
anxiety. That's really normal. The question that we're looking for as far as like, do I need
right, and then
treatment?
like
Do I
it
need
doesn't even
professional
seem like it's
support?
hitting them.
Is my anxiety disproportionate to events consistently, and is it also causing dysfunction?
Like,
in
I'm
my
dropping
life,
down to
Is
like
it
50.
ruining my life as a result? And if you're like, well, it's not really ruining my life because I just never have to leave the house, I would be like, well, if you wanted to leave the house, would you? And if your answer was no, I would say that's definitely worth looking into, because it's like you might be missing out on things that you've just decided to not value anymore. True, Anna, you could be wrong about your own diagnosis as well. So the question of like, when do you refer, this is kind of what I answered before. So this isn't when to refer somebody else, this is for yourself. Like, when should you go be seeing professional help? When should you go to therapy? I would argue you can go to therapy at any point in time. I don't know if there's a specific point where it's like you must go to therapy. I think in general, most people could benefit from some elements of therapy, even just to get some of the psychoeducational tools to know like how to emotionally regulate, stuff like that. When I would say you're at a point where it's like you should really strongly be considering seeking a professional is if, like I said again, your anxiety is chipping into your life in a way where it's like causing you to lose relationships, it's affecting your work, it's affecting your education to an extreme degree, or if it's just causing
something
your
is-
life to just become miserable. Anxiety is
Something is
treatable,
causing me
especially with therapy.
issues.
It's got a pretty high efficacy
Maybe
rate,
it's the control,
which just
I don't
means,
know.
like, effectiveness at, well, not effectiveness per se, because effectiveness and efficacy are technically different. It's basically, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. Efficacy is essentially the degree to which something treats a precise thing well. How can you get a therapist? I don't believe you need a doctor to refer you to a therapist. A lot of therapists have private practice and take insurance, so most people can get a therapist just by calling a psychologist. or a therapist in their area and seeing if they take it. I do have a
Yeah,
video
my
on YouTube
charge shot
called
like
How
is
to Find
not
a
working.
Therapist. I believe there's a number of videos I found as well from other content creators that also talk about how to find a therapist and how to interview them and stuff. Just look at all of those to kind of get an idea of what a bunch of different people recommend, to get an idea
probably
of what
gonna
you're
need to
looking
get a
for. There
therapist
is
at
a
some
bit of
point.
a like, how do you say it? Is it buyer beware, essentially. There is a bit of like, unfortunately, like some level of vetting you have to do on your own for therapy. But therapists do try to make it, good therapists will try to make it as easy as possible. If you tell them what you're looking for, they can let you know if that's something that they're specialized in and they work with, okay? Finally, if there's some sort of like compulsive anxiety going on, so say for example, you're constantly feeling like it's not just like an urge to do something, but it's like if you don't do it, there will be problems. Like you must do this thing, and the things that you're feeling compelled to do, when you think about it logically, don't make a lot of sense, right? So
Oh,
if it's
come
like,
on.
I need to go check that my house is locked for the 8th time, right? I know that I turned off the stove, but I'm panicking. I like want to go turn off the stove. I want to check every lock. You know, I need to wash my hands like this number of times. Anything that feels like a must is also worth just talking to a professional about. It might be nothing. It might be nothing. It's better to talk to a professional and find out that it's nothing than to leave things untreated. So generally what we would say is if there's two functioning areas that are impaired, if there is a development of depression, so anxiety and depression often co-occur together. So if you have anxiety and you're also now developing
I think I left a whole
depression
bunch
as
of stuff
result,
up
that is
there.
a big
But I'm not really
treating-
worried
when
about it.
you're
I'm not
having
trying
these
to pick
two
up no
things
anchor song
together, it's
charge.
like
I've
worst
fought this like
twin
5
sisters
different
ever,
times already.
or brothers or whatever, or that compulsive anxiety. So I'm going to show you guys this panic attacks. It's a video. Hold on. It is by Cindy J. Aronson. What causes panic attacks and how can you prevent them?
Yeah, it seems like it's something wrong with my controller. I think my controller battery is low or something. Because it definitely...
The body becomes its own corset. Past, present, and future exist as a single force.
Because I took my hand off of
swing
the
without
stick for a
gravity
second,
soars to a terrifying height.
and I had been turning the... there
outlines
it
of
is.
people and things dissolve. Countless poets and writers have tried to put words to the experience of a panic
Yeah,
attack.
because it seems like when
A
I was
sensation
I was
so
turned, I took
overwhelming,
one hand
many
off of the
people
controller
mistake it for a heart attack,
and was
stroke,
holding to the
or other
right,
life-threatening
and it just
crisis.
spun me in a circle.
Though panic attacks
Once I
don't
let go of
cause
the right
long-term
stick.
physical harm, afterwards, the fear of another attack can limit someone's daily life and cause more panic attacks. Studies suggest that almost a third of us will experience at least one panic attack in our lives. And whether it's your first, your 100th,
Okay,
or
I
you're
think I'm
witnessing someone else go
probably
through
just
one,
going to change over
no
to this
one wants
video
to
and
repeat
watch
the
this
experience.
exclusively.
Even learning about them can be
The
uncomfortable,
controller needs to be
but it's
charged right
necessary,
now.
because the first step to preventing panic attacks is
not really gonna work.
understanding them. At its core, a panic attack is an overreaction to the body's normal physiological response to the perception of danger. This response starts with the amygdala, the brain region involved in processing fear. When the amygdala perceives danger, it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which triggers the release of adrenaline. Adrenaline prompts an increase in the heart and breathing rate to get blood and oxygen to the muscles of the arms and legs. This also sends oxygen to the brain, making it more alert and responsive. During a panic attack, this response is exaggerated well past what would be useful in a dangerous situation, causing a racing heart, heavy breathing, or hyperventilation. The changes to blood flow cause lightheadedness and numbness in the hands and feet. A panic attack usually peaks within 10 minutes. Then, the prefrontal cortex takes over from the amygdala and stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. This triggers the release of a hormone called acetylcholine that decreases the heart rate and gradually winds down the panic attack. In a panic attack, the body's perception of danger is enough to trigger the response we would have to a real threat, and then some. We don't know for sure why this happens, but sometimes cues in the environment that remind us of traumatic past experience can trigger a panic attack. Panic attacks can be part of anxiety disorders like PTSD, social anxiety disorder, OCD, and generalized anxiety disorder. Recurring panic attacks, frequent worry about new attacks, and behavioral changes to avoid panic attacks can lead to a diagnosis of a panic disorder. The two main treatments for panic disorder are antidepressant medication and cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Both have
CBT.
about a 40%
I've heard about
response rate,
CBT, but I don't.
though someone who
I've heard about CBT, but I don't really know. I know it's cognitive behavioral therapy, but I don't really know what that means. Right? Like, I get it, but I don't. I couldn't tell you what that really entails.
responds to one
They're probably
may not
gonna
respond to the other.
tell us here, so let's listen.
However, antidepressant
No, not that. I don't wanna
medications
play that.
carry some side effects, and 50%
Try
of
and play
people
something light that I
relapse
didn't
when
have
they
to,
stop
like-
taking them. CBT, meanwhile, is more lasting, with only a 20% relapse rate. The goal of CBT treatment for
Hold on again. Let's do a thing.
panic disorder is to help people learn and practice concrete tools to exert physical and, in turn, mental control over the sensations and thoughts associated with a panic attack. CBT begins with an explanation of the physiological causes of a panic attack, followed by breath and muscle exercises designed to help people consciously control breathing patterns. Next comes cognitive restructuring, which involves identifying and changing the thoughts that are common during attacks.
Okay, so I
Such
need
as
to go back
believing you're-
because I didn't hear him very
The
much.
goal of
but-
CBT treatment for panic disorder is to help people learn and practice concrete tools to exert physical and, in turn, mental control over the sensations and thoughts associated with a panic attack. CBT begins with an explanation of the physiological causes of a panic attack, followed by breath and muscle exercises designed to help people consciously control breathing patterns. Next comes cognitive
Okay.
restructuring, which involves identifying and changing the thoughts that are common during attacks, such as believing you'll stop breathing, have a heart attack, or die, and replacing them with more accurate thoughts.
Okay,
The next
so
stage of treatment is exposure to
so that seems like, to me, it's just reframing the situation. So, like, for example, somebody might have like the worst idea of what would happen. Like, oh, if I go outside, they're going to hate me. They're going to think I'm ugly. They're going to do whatever. And it seems like it's like your goal is to essentially be like, okay, no, that's not what's going to happen. It could happen, but it could also not happen. And even if it does happen, it also could not be that bad. It seems like this is a thing where you're trying to figure out, like, hey, what are other ways that this could go without defaulting to the worst possible example, I should say. So instead of like they're laughing, and maybe kind of, yeah, like reframing. I know I'm not really explaining pretty well, but kind of like, for example, they're laughing because they're laughing at me. Like, no, they might be laughing at something else. They might not even be looking at you. They may not even know that you're there, you know?
the bodily sensations and situations that typically trigger a panic attack. The goal is to change the belief through experience that these sensations and situations are dangerous. Even after CBT, taking these steps isn't easy in the grip of an attack. But with
Oh, okay. So first they try to get you to cognitively change it through the reframing, and then they try to get you to put yourself in the situation. So the third step is kind of like putting, it's like when I was a kid, that's actually, yeah, I should have kept doing stuff like that. When I was a kid, I used to be afraid of the dark. And so to get over my fear of the dark, it was like, okay, I need to go out and stand in the dark. So I went outside of my room and I closed the door to my room and I closed the door to all the other rooms. So there was no other light that could get in. It was upstairs. So it was like no light was really getting in through any windows, and all the light downstairs wasn't reaching upstairs. So it was like I was in pitch dark. I just stood out there for like, I think, a good hour until I just like stopped caring. And once that happened, I was like, okay, cool. I'm not scared of the dark anymore. I think that's kind of what they're doing. They're not just throwing you into it, though. It seems like first we work on actively calming you down, teaching you how to calm yourself down so that if it does get out of control, you can pull it back down. And then we teach you how to think differently about the things so that they're not as provoking as they were before. And then we throw you into the situation.
Practice, these tools can both prevent and de-escalate attacks and ultimately reduce the hold of panic on a person's life. Outside formal therapy, many panickers find relief from the same beliefs CBT aims to instill: that fear can't hurt you, but holding on to it will escalate panic. Even if you've never had a panic attack, understanding them will help you identify one in yourself or someone else, and recognizing them is the first step in preventing them.
Okay, back. I'm going to pause now for questions. So I'm not going to get a ton into panic attacks beyond kind of what that video showed. Panic attacks are both a mental health condition, but can also be a medical health condition. And obviously,
Yes.
yeah, I think when it comes to the medical stuff. So one thing to bear in mind if you're starting to have panic attacks, it's always worth talking to a doctor actually first and foremost, because there are some medical conditions that can cause panic attacks because it actually influences like your cardiovascular system. So it's always worth checking that. I know that video is super overly stimulating, but it's like a whole bunch of information packed into like 7 minutes, present better than I ever could from an actual licensed psychologist. Okay. So I had a friend who would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night having a panic attack for no apparent reason. I never understood how a panic attack could be triggered during sleep. Interesting question. I think there's going to be a lot of questions on panic attacks. I'm going to encourage you guys to move more towards anxiety disorders, because that's where
I haven't had any like panic attacks or anything like that, but I definitely deal with anxiety and like making decisions that aren't necessarily the best for my life and kind of holding back because of that. And now she's saying that, certain issues could be caused by like health related issues as opposed to mental health related issues. I think it's a combination of both, but I think that I think a lot of it has to do with like I put on like a good amount of weight. Back when I was but when I first moved to where I'm at now, which was at this point, yeah, it was 10 years ago at this point. I was pretty at like my heaviest with like muscle on me. I was like 135 maybe. Now I'm like 160. I think like 164, and like that's doing good. That's improving because like I was up to like 180, and so like before like not being cut, but like still having like a good amount of muscle on my body, I was at like 135. So I put on like about 30 to 40 extra pounds of just like almost pure fat. So I'm pretty sure that has a good thing to do with it.
we're going to be focusing on is I'm going to move more directly into social anxiety. So any questions about that versus just panic attacks themselves? I just wanted people to be aware. The main like pro tips I'll give you is
nope.
So 3, 2, 1 is basically 3 things you see. So 3, 2, 1. So do you mind? And that gave them an opportunity to say yes or no. Child, and where are you right now? And techniques around basically grounding.
Okay, we do have to go back and
so
look a little bit.
Some common grounding techniques would be, for example, you could do grounding talks. So sometimes when I've helped people out who are having a panic attack, what I've done is I have asked them just really simple grounding questions. Do you know where you are right now? Where are you right now?
Get them out of their head, get them to focus on
really simple one-word answers. And I also often, if I'm noticing somebody having a panic attack, if they're in like a public setting, so like when I worked at camp, right, with a bunch of kids, it's just a bunch of 19-year-old untrained adults with children running summer camp, and they were at-risk teens, so there was a lot of mental health. So what I did, I remember there's a kid having a panic attack. One of the first things I try to do is get them to a slightly more private location. So not private as in like just me and them, obviously, because, child and all those other issues, but away from the group, because if you're having a panic attack and everyone is staring at you, it's a little bit anxiety inducing to be stared at while like you're having this panic attack, because it can be really distressing, but also like embarrassing. So I try to move them to a more secluded location. So typically I would say something like, do you mind if we go hang out in in this case, my boss's office, right? So that way there was 3 staff there, and the kiddo, and it got them just away from the other kids who were doing other stuff, right? So do you mind? And that gave them an opportunity to say yes or no. Obviously, if they said no, I wouldn't have moved them. Then I'll ask them grounding questions just to see basically like, where are you? Do they know where they are? Other things that you can do is things like 3-2-1. 3-2-1, if anyone's ever gone to therapy, you've probably heard about 3-2-1. So 3-2-1 is basically 3 things you see, 2 things you hear, 1 thing you feel, and then you rotate. So I often will rotate senses as well. This is if anyone has gone to therapy, most people have learned either 3-2-1 or 5-4-3-2-1. 5-4-3-2-1 is just all 5 senses. I just skip smell and taste because my smell is not very good and I usually can't smell anything anyways. And taste, it's like, I usually don't have something in my mouth. So I'm like, I don't know, I taste my tongue, I guess. Usually these are the 3 that I'd rotate through.
The thing I always use to like help me like ground myself when I'm like kind of all over the place and kind of distracted has normally been to kind of like I'm normally be wearing shoes, but like take my toes and like scrunch them and like kind of like almost try to dig them into my shoe, or if like I don't have a shoe on, into the ground, and like really try to feel whatever is under my feet. I know this sounds weird to say, but try to feel it as if like you're eating a piece of candy and it's like the last candy you're gonna ever have. That whole candy bar, I heard that from it was some type of quote from Kim Jong-gi. But like that's the best way to describe that. It's like you're trying your best to take in as much as you can with that sense, so that you don't miss anything. You're trying to savor it.
If you've never heard of this in therapy, that's fine. This is a very, very standard therapeutic technique. If you just Google grounding techniques, this technique is one of the first ones that come up on like most Be Well websites. So what I typically do is I pair it with breathing. So tell me 3 things you see, then they'll list them. Or I do this by myself, right? What are 3 things that I see? So I'll like look around and I'll say like, water bottle, a mic, my mouse. Okay, what are 2 things that I hear? And I'll close my eyes and listen. Well, I hear the hum of my computer and I can hear the sound of my voice. Okay, what's 1 thing that I feel? And what you're looking for is some sort of physical stimuli on your body specifically. So I can feel the cuff of my sleeve on my forearm.
Yep.
And then I rotate those. So then I do 3 things that I hear, 2 things that I feel, 1 thing that I see. And then 3 things that I feel, 2 things that I see, 1 thing that I hear. And I just keep rotating them. And I found for myself, I'd insert breaths in between as well. So 3 things I do 3 things that I hear, 2 things that I feel, 1 thing that I see. And then 3 things that I feel, 2 things that I see, 1 thing that I hear. And I just keep rotating them. And I found for myself, I'd insert breaths in between as well. So 3 things I see, because it grounds you. So this is a way to manage acute anxiety. It's not going to treat your anxiety long-term necessarily. Sometimes it can, though. Just being good at managing acute can, for some people, be enough to kind of get them over it. But this is a really good acute. It's basically like a brief meditation. Yeah, it's basically getting you to focus on present. It's like a mindfulness practice.
Right. This is good at getting you to get it down in a minute.
If somebody's in the midst of a panic attack, I probably wouldn't go here.
Right. This is pain meds,
probably
but it's
start
not
with getting
healing.
them to a space that they feel safe in, and then asking them, "Do you know where you are?" I'm not going to ask them a ton of questions. I'm not going to ask them to give me lengthy explanations. Do you know where you are right now? Yes. Okay. And then I'll ask them things like, are you presently safe? And they'll kind of look around and they'll say, yes. But they might say, I feel like I'm dying. Okay. Usually if they say that, I'll say, do you want to go to the hospital? Right? I almost always give people that option because I think it's just way safer to do so. I'll ask questions like, is there any risk to your body right now? So if you notice, a lot of these questions are yes or no, because if in the middle of a panic attack, a lot of people are having such a hard time getting air in and out fast enough that I want them to be able to just use their head so they can keep their breathing. Because you want to make sure that they're getting enough oxygen. Obviously, the goal is to get them to slow down their breathing, but you're not going to do that by like forcing them to talk and making them feel even more out of breath. You're going to get them to do that by getting them to slowly increase the length of their inhales and their exhales, right? I'm here with you, you're safe, stuff like that. Yeah, that's the main thing. This is why every single person who's trained typically in psychotherapy is always told, this is what I've both trained my staff on and been trained on, which is always, if a panic attack is occurring, allow them to call the ER. If they complain about heart and like breathing issues, especially if you don't know them well, you just need to take them. Like they need to go see a doctor, because you don't want to risk that it's actually a cardiovascular event.
Right.
Like, you don't know. You're not a magician.
And if they die, you've kind of helped them die.
Not gonna lie, if people would ask these questions while in a panic mode, I would die. You would gauge it a little bit. I've found these questions have always worked really well, actually, in when I've like talked with kiddos and stuff. That way, like, for example, is there any risk to your body right now? If they like point to an area that's like in pain, like if they're like, there's a pinching pain, and they like point to like where like maybe their appendix is, that's really useful information. That's just like good health information to know, right? Because then I'm obviously calling 911. Annoyed ER employee noises. Hey, I get it, ER employee noises, but I'm gonna be honest, we don't want to risk. I don't want to be the person who's like, you're not having a cardiovascular event, you're just having a panic attack, and then they keel over because they actually we're having a heart attack like that. Nobody wants to be that person. Bad look. Now I have a much less pretty thing, so I'm gonna walk you through the rest of the information rather than. So now I'm gonna focus on exclusively social anxiety. Okay, so we've talked broadly about anxiety. I covered panic attacks briefly, but mostly just to kind of like let people know like what they look like. And
okay, so what I'm getting from this is kind of like, well, there's a number of things. For these different sections here, let me try to go over and see like what I would say is like the major things I learned here. The anxiety part, this is just the images and basic explanation. That it kind of like holds you back in life. It kind of, it's like a silent cage, you know. It's an invisible cage around you. Experiencing anxiety. This lists off the effects it has on your body, your mind, and your behavior. This lists one of the versions of coping with it. Negative coping behaviors, excessive planning, where you'll plan for stuff really super hard, really super fat. Like, not super fat. What am I saying? You'll plan for stuff excessively, and then like the 10% of the time it works, it kind of reinforces you to be like, okay, yeah, you definitely should worry and you should plan super hard, like a whole lot. And then, you know, you keep doing it, and then you kind of ignore the 90% of the time that you fail, where you don't need it. And then the one time you need it, it's like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I need to keep doing it, you know. Then there is the avoidance cycle, which I think this is what I'm more caught up in. Relieves the stress temporarily, reinforces the fear grow, which leads to more avoidance, which is kind of, yeah, says closer to where I'm at. Anticipation and fear. AKA, anxiety is kind of the anticipation of, well, right here, anxiety is an anticipation of future danger or whatever. These different examples. This is saying basically you need help when it's starting to harm your life, in a broad sense. It's the video did on it, questions, ground. Now here's the grounding techniques.
I remember when I was
social
like 19,
anxiety.
I had really
I have
intense
a
dissociation.
lot of problem with.
When I was like between the ages of like probably 16 to 19. And yeah, I also hated mindfulness techniques a lot. What I would recommend, 3-2-1 is a little bit easier for the dissociation specifically, because it gives you something to focus on other than the distress within your body. Because I would basically say mindfulness techniques when I was in dissociation felt like I was peeking over a ledge, which was the rest of my body. And at the bottom was like screaming, like like just a horror scene. And I was like, no, thank you. I don't want to see that. I'm good. 3-2-1 was a bit of a better acute anxiety manager for somebody, for at least me when I was dissociated. Obviously, if a professional that you are working with gives you different advice, follow that. But I found that helped me with my dissociation was the 3-2.
Now that I'm watching this, I wonder if disassociation is kind of like when like I experience pain or something like that, I can kind of like, I guess, recede into myself is what it kind of feels like, and how I kind of think of it, to kind of ignore the pain and like not necessarily push it off somewhere, but like kind of like, oh, don't feel that, come back here, so I'm, it doesn't affect me.
2-1.
I wonder if you would say that that's dissociation, or if that is a more healthy version of it, where it's like dissociation might be like an unhealthy, it's harming your life version of it.
Something to focus on other than just my body. Like, it's a little bit of the body, you get the feel a little bit, but I can still say external. So basically tricking your brain into forgetting it's panicking by focusing on other things. Yes, and focusing on, like, the interesting thing of grounding techniques is you're tricking your body to be calm by focusing in on what your body sensations actually are. So noticing, for example, being like, my heart is racing really fast, but there isn't actually pain, right? So being like, okay, right, and kind of getting these like little noticing factors. Okay, so what is social anxiety? So as I talked about, anxiety disorders are essentially disproportionate and typically leading to dysfunction in a couple of areas of your life, that your anxious reactions to events are bigger than seem kind of normative or reasonable for the event, right? So in the case of social anxiety, it's reasonable to feel shy and anxious in a social exchange sometimes. However, if you feel it all the time, or you feel it to an extreme degree that it like debilitates you from ever like meeting new people, if it's blending, if it's generalizing to like even just when you're around your friends and stuff like that, that's where we're getting into the social anxiety, maybe disorder. But remember, all these things are spectrum. So remember, there's a spectrum of experience. So you can feel socially anxious and not have social anxiety disorder, and your feelings of social anxiety are valid, important, and need to be looked at. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have the diagnosis. I try to leave the diagnosis up to the professionals.
After social anxiety, we're going to stop this stream.
However, it's really important to identify what's going on for you, right? That way you can communicate it.
I don't really
feelings of social anxiety are decently common.
I'm
tired. Pervasive and constant all the time,
and I want to
they're
move.
Worth looking at. So social anxiety is actually one of the most common mental health disorders on the planet. It's got a prevalence rate of about 2.8 to 7%. So almost 10% of the population. It's also a really unique mental health disorder in that it's a mood disorder that endures for a super, super long time. So some people, for example, I'm trying to remember, I don't know what the average number of years is, but for some people, they'll go untreated with social anxiety for like 25 years. Basically the reason why this is not because social anxiety is so untreatable, but because
people, I'm going to try to guess, I'm assuming it's because people will avoid going and seeking help because they have social anxiety. So they don't want to go meet people, Like, you don't want to go tell somebody, oh yeah, I'm scared of talking to you right now. I'm scared of talking to everybody. I'm scared of interacting with people in period. Like, you social anxiety causes you to avoid people, so you can't really go get the help.
Social anxiety is almost antithetical to the process of therapy, right? Social anxiety is distinct. It's not shyness. It's not lack of social skill. It's distinctly a fear of negative evaluation in social interactions. So it's not, I'm afraid of social interactions, because it's specifically, I'm afraid of being viewed as weird, creepy, awkward, lame, boring, just some negative evaluation of others based on my interactions with them. And if you imagine, therapy is sitting down one-on-one with a professional to get scrutinized socially the entire time. Now, therapy is very effective.
So I was wrong.
Unless your therapist really sucks, they're not going to make you feel scrutinized. They're going to make you hopefully feel understood and seen. But this is why a lot of people with social anxiety disorder can be really resistant to going and getting treatment, because it sounds like a nightmare. They're like, so you want me to pay somebody to just sit in front of them and they'll just tell me everything that's wrong with me for an hour straight?
Yes.
I'm good. I do that in my brain for free. I don't need it. But that's not how therapy actually works. As somebody who had very intense social anxiety struggles and also went to therapy for it, it works really well. Social anxiety
Thing is
feelings.
though, that feeling of anxiety for me doesn't really like I can do this and it's fine. But like sitting in front of somebody, I feel like there's expectations of how I should interact and what I should do that I don't know how to like match, and so it's like it's weird. Only time I feel like comfortable, like free, I guess you'd say, is like I might not even have anxiety for all I know. I don't know. I need to go probably need to go see a therapist, but it can be anything from like that to like the only thing that makes me no back on track. The only thing that makes me kind of feel like free, I guess, in interactions is if like there's conflict, like anger, like we're at odds, and it's like I'm no longer trying to hold back. Like straight up just like I like we're just being mean to each other. You know, like I hate you, you hate me. Cool, we're just going back and forth. Cause in that type of like scenario, it's like I don't have to worry about being judged by other people because like I know you're gonna judge me and I don't care about your judgment. You see what I'm saying? Whereas like normally it's like, okay, what does this person think of me? Do they think I'm a weirdo? I don't want to look like a weirdo. I need to stop doing this because it's gonna make me. Yeah, the more I think about this, it's gonna make me more weird. It's gonna make me act. But that didn't stop it, you know. So
Are super common. 50 to 60% of people report feeling social anxiety some of the time. There's very, very few people who just never have experienced social anxiety ever, and we all hate those people. I'm just kidding. Nick is one of those. He's just never been socially anxious ever. He's never feared a negative evaluation, and in his mind, if somebody like interacts with him and they think he's a piece of shit based on his interaction or whatever, he's like, oh, so they kind of suck. And I'm like, imagine the superpower of walking away from a social interaction and they thought negative of you. Literally, you know that they did, and you can just say fuck you to them. Like, wow, amazing.
that might actually. I think that's why I have a hard time with it. I don't default. I think I used to when I was younger. I think I used to default to like, oh, that person doesn't like me. Oh, they suck. Fuck you then. You know, like I would. I think I should start taking that position more. Hmm. I don't know. Let's continue though.
One thing that's important is that there's kind of this fear of being perceived. So a lot of people with SAD will report common fears of being perceived as weak, as crazy, as anxious, as stupid, boring, intimidating, dirty, or unlikable. Those are the common phrases that people will report with social anxiety. That
Everything else didn't really work for me until she said unlikable, and I was like, oh no, that is it. Uh, it's like a mixture of the unlikable thing, but like, cause it's not necessarily that I want individual people to like me. Like I don't care if most people like me. I think that's part of the reason why I'm able to do this is like, I can sit up here and talk to you on the stream because it's like who cares, you know. But there's kind of like there's something else behind it where it's like I don't want to be in a position where I'm rejected by everybody. Like I think that's the thing I'm more concerned about is like oh it's not an individual thing. Like an individual thing like you can go get bent, you know. But like even with streaming and stuff, like it's certain things I want to stream or like talk about. It's like I don't want to do that because it might affect me negatively. Maybe it'll be seen online and then I won't be able to get a job and all that stuff. And I'm not like I said, I'm not worried if like you know any particular group sees or anything or like that would get me in trouble or something. Like I'm worried like, oh, everybody knows me and now I'm like I'm hated like Andrew Tate, but I have none of the benefits from being in that type of position and like now I can't do nothing and now I'm like on my own and I'm like abandoned.
they're afraid
you know?
of being perceived as. So I'll say those again. Weak, obviously this is not limited. You can have other feelings about it, but these are the feelings that socially anxious people report most often: weak, crazy, anxious, stupid, boring, intimidating, dirty, or unlikable. So there's the distinctive low self-evaluation
And boring. Boring hits me hard too.
that goes with it as well, right? So even mild social anxiety can often have significant impacts on self-esteem and self-perception. So this can produce kind of disproportionately negative perceptions of their.
And boring also affects this string. That's how I felt. That's kind of how I feel when I'm speaking now. But I'm kind of just going through it because I'm like, all right, whatever. Like I said, I can kind of be like, I don't really care what y'all think. I can keep moving anyway. Not to make anybody feel bad, but you know, I don't really care that much.
own performance and their and others' reactions to themselves. So there's really interesting research on this actually, that showed that a lot of people with social anxiety, so this is what Joe Tone talked about, is there a relationship between social anxiety and social skill and confidence. So there is a relationship between confidence and social anxiety, which is that when you have more social anxiety, you tend to feel way less confident, which makes sense, right? You feel less capable, you feel more overcome by it. However, social anxiety is not predictive of social skill at all. So while you're constantly afraid that you're failing socially, the reality is that you're usually not. In fact, most of the times when socially anxious people actually begin to struggle and fail in social interactions, it's produced by their social anxiety, being hyper aware of them, not because they actually just suck at social interactions, right? So there was one really interesting study where you had a whole bunch of people who were filmed and had to talk in like a group conversation, and everyone was kind of forced to talk. And at the end of the group discussion, they had to rate how they felt they did. And then there were observers who rated the film itself, and they had to rate everyone's social performance in the group based on the film. And it was multiple observers, and they cross-referenced their observations to make sure that they were rating similarly, et cetera, et cetera. It was very researchy. Confounding variables were gone. Don't worry, it was real research. Okay, so what they found is that socially anxious people rated their performance in a social domain really low, and the observers of the interactions rated them usually about average. Their results of their social performance varied as much as everyone else. There was no difference in the socially anxious group to the non-socially anxious group. The only difference was the self-perception of failure. So most people with high social anxiety get a really low self-esteem and a negative self-perception of basically.
I think about certain stuff like that a lot, where I think the mental perception of like doing not well or some type of negative belief about yourself kind of affects how you do. Like one thing that I recently read about, where it's like if you think you're unlucky, you're probably gonna be unlucky, and it's like, and the actual reason why that turned out to be the case was that if you see yourself as unlucky, you're likely not going to even look for situations where you can benefit from. So things where you might actually be lucky, like you're just not gonna see it. What was it? It was like there's a. It's like there was a test where, no, I heard about this somewhere. I heard about this on the stream somewhere where it's like there's a test, right? And they want you to read through this thing or do like a test or do some type of like written test, something like that. No, you have to look through this and like read these like parts of these words under a picture. And once you read all of those, give the answer and they'll give you like $100. If you thought of yourself as a lucky person, you would go through and you would see like on like the first picture it says something like, well, this is it, you're done. If you sing this, you're done, you know, finish it up, no, just turn in or whatever for 100, go collect your $150, you know. And so everybody who rated themselves as lucky went and got those things, but people who rated themselves as not lucky overlooked that because they weren't concerned about that. They weren't concerned about, because they saw themselves as unlucky, they weren't concerned about looking for potential goods in the environment that could help them. They stopped looking. They stopped being hopeful, which hurt their performance.
Basically like, I'm a failure, I'm weird, people don't like me. And the reality is that's not usually true. In another study that they did with socially anxious people, a lot of people who are socially anxious, when they're asked to rate, for example, faces, different facial expressions.
That's hyper. Do I have that? Hold on. Let me put my capture the cursor. Okay. Sabe. There we go. This right here. That's hyper not helpful. Right? A lot of stuff I start to look at, it's like, okay, cool. Maybe you do have a good reason for something, but that doesn't mean anything because it's not helpful. Zero low self-esteem for being nobody. That's not true. You're still you, and you get to experience you. So why would you have low? No.
They're more likely to assume, and in the study they're told, imagine somebody's making this face at you. What do you think it means? They were more likely to take neutral faces, like just like staring at you, as negative, and positive faces as just neutral. So a lot of what social anxiety does is it skews your mindset towards a more negative. So this is actually flies in contradiction. Has anybody ever heard of the concept depressive realism? Anyone ever heard of that?
I'm liking watching this, so
Yes, the donation queue is for the stream, just to continue. I usually go for
especially
about
the
4
more I
hours.
speak.
Basically, I'm going to end when I'm done this talk. If you want me to cover more stuff, I want to try to get this filled. So, yeah. Anyone ever heard of depressive realism, sorry?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna go for like
I have a
another
couple of
2
you.
minute.
So depressive realism was this theory that
Whoever
so
she
there
reaches
was
the
one
next.
study that found that depressed people had a more accurate perception of their performance than other people. It found that basically people who weren't depressed tend to rate their performances much better than much better than it actually was, whereas depressive people were much better at evaluating their own performance accurately. So that idea was persistent for a really long time, which flies in the face of basically all of CBT theory modeling, because the idea that somebody's cognitions would be more accurate when depressed doesn't make sense when CBT kind of argues that like depressive moods and like basically cognitive distortions co-occur together to somewhat create and facilitate the mental health problem. That's depressive realism. I have good news though. There was a new recent meta-analysis that came out. I believe it came out in like 2019, something like that, that looked at depressive realism for replication across like the last 40 years of research. And it basically found that there's no evidence of depressive realism. It means then that when you're having a mental health crisis, when you're experiencing high levels of anxiety or depression, you are not perceiving the world as accurately as other people. You're actually experiencing distortions in your thinking.
So that one comment I circled that was talking about what if you actually have a reason to feel low self-esteem because you're a nobody. That guy, you probably are actually wrong. You probably aren't actually a nobody. You probably just don't know it because you're not looking for it. I think that actually might be part of the thing. I think I'm gonna start actively seeking. This has actually been very good for me in terms of streaming. I think I'm gonna watch more stuff like this and just kind of like speak and give my own opinion. Uh, I think it. I think I should spend time like looking at. I think I should spend time no. I think I should spend time actively looking for evidence to the contrary, because when I start to get into like more depressive mood and anxiety and all that, my brain's like looking for like, oh no, what's this the bad thing? You're bad because of this. This is not good because of this. You're not doing enough here. You're not doing. I think I need to stop doing that. I think I need to start actively when I start thinking like that, like, oh, I'm bad, because it's like, no. Now let's purposefully do a biased like think session. Let's try to build up a bias thing, because like we're already building up in the bias towards the negative side. Let's just start doing it positively. I think that'll help.
This is why, for example, people with social anxiety are going to perceive a neutral expression as a negative evaluation of them, right? So if they're talking to somebody, say you're talking to somebody and the person you're talking to starts like kind of looking off around you, a socially anxious person might go, they're bored of me, I'm boring them. Whereas somebody who's not socially anxious.
Oh my God. Yep. That. Yep.
anxious might be like, I wonder what's over there, right? And the reality is that the person was looking away. It's possible that they were thinking. I tend to look up and away when I'm thinking. It's possible that there is something over there that they're looking at.
Right,
Also,
they're
just possible they
distracted.
got distracted. They're not bored. They
Right.
just got distracted, right? And so a lot of socially anxious people tend to read into things that aren't there and perceive things way more negatively, particularly in how people feel about them. Right. So this was like a common thing when Nick and I first started dating, is we would like spend time with his friends or like people I didn't know. And I'd be like, none of them like me. They all hated me. They thought I was boring and weird. And he's like, what? Like, you were a little quiet, but that's about it. Like, people are shy. And I was like, no, they thought I was weird. And he was like, okay, I don't think that's true, but you know, I'm not going to fight with you. This is very classic in like the socially anxious person. It's just like everyone hates them, even though every single person around them is like, you're just normal. Like, you're just nice. It'd be nice if you talked more. You're a little shy, but like, yeah, you're fine. If you've been diagnosed with complex PTSD, a lot of what you're saying about social anxiety sounds similar. Is it, or are they two different animals? So complex PTSD is not a true DSM-5 diagnosis. You should not be being diagnosed with it. The professional who did diagnose you is giving you probably a label to help you understand the things, but it is not a recognized diagnosis. What it is essentially some element of, my life is super fucked up, so I have a lot of dysfunction as a result. I don't feel that there's good value to having the diagnosis.
Okay, so I think I'm gonna be done with it for the night. Cause I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm like, I don't really care. Kind of feel But another part of me doesn't want to get off because it's like, what's probably gonna happen is I'm gonna get off here and continue watching this, and I think the best like way for me to deal with this, to like get myself into the throes of doing this streaming thing for real, is to all the things that I would normally do on the computer while not streaming, just do them and have a camera on, and then I can just talk over it. Like, instead of like what I normally do is I would get up, I'd walk out there, right, and then I would go out to the garage and I would walk in circles, thinking to myself, or actively holding a conversation in my head with like somebody else that isn't really there, but like I'm just working out my ideas, you know. I think that's actually a common sign of like ADHD. Like, you hold entire conversations in your head, you know, because like you're bored, and so your brain just kind of tries to fill the empty, the lack of stimulation with something. So now I think this kind of like allows me to do that, because I can kind of have the conversations out in the open, and I can do it, you know, while I'm doing what I normally would do.
Diagnosis of complex PTSD, because it essentially isn't a very meaningful diagnosis, because it leads to more confusion than anything else. I don't know.
Okay, so let's see. Oh man, hold on. Hold on. Hold on.
First step, make sure you're in the Eevee render engine. Second step, go to your shadow section.
Don't care, we're not. I can do that another time. History. Ripping someone's head off. Nope, nope, no, no. Nope, nope, nope. I just remembered we're on YouTube, and we can definitely catch ourselves a ban. Let's see. Oh, let's put it over here for a second. Hydra. Let's see. Okay.
Hey everybody, before we jump into this interview, I just wanted to tell you about the Schoolism Winter Sale and play you a short little clip, if that's okay with you.
This picture is wild. I didn't even fully look at this when I first saw it. I just kind of looked at the woman. I'm now like realizing like, oh, she's not just lying on the ground. She's lying on the ground looking at something specific. Oh wait, she has blood. Oh wait, that's a head. This perfectly encapsulated the feeling that I wanted to give for one of my pieces, and it does it so much better. The story artist. This is crazy. I'm trying to evaluate this from a story perspective because, like, you have this woman down here who's like ornate and everything. Like, she's like, I don't know, maybe some type of dancer or a, what's it called? Not prostitute, but not dancer, but, I guess it's how you get, I don't know, whatever concubine or something like that, eating this man's head who has long hair and stuff. Well, I'm thinking it's like a king or something, only because of the room they're in. And there's like these guards, but they're just kind of like watching. But then again, like they might be like surprised and shocked because you have this woman here and her hands kind of like seem like, oh my god, what am I looking at?
Okay, here we go.
Spread some holiday cheer this season by giving the gift of learning to your
Announced just last month at
Yeah, okay, so I think I'm gonna watch this somewhere else. Yeah, it's past one. It's past one, and I think I'm done. So I will see you all tomorrow. I'm gonna start this up again, like the middle of the day. I don't know, but yeah. So if you all like my content or you like my rambling and all that other bull, you can go to the description of this stream, and in that description, you shall find a link to my Instagram, my Twitter, my TikTok, and then you can have a link tree as well, so you can get to all those if you really want to. But yeah, hope you check everything else out. I got art on my Instagram and my Twitter, but TikTok has nothing. I don't even think I have a picture up there because I don't know to put up there. I'm just now getting to the point where I'm like, okay, let's just spend time on the internet and stream it, because have something to do. Give my thoughts on it. Give a unique perspective. I think from the future I'm gonna kind of like augment myself emotionally a little bit more. Part of me kind of wants to go like the I Show Speed and the what's his name? I Show Speed and Kaisen at route where it's like be really bombastic, loud, be very, energetic because like it gets tension. But then another part of me wants to be like, well, no, you need to be able to. That's not really how I naturally am. But then again, it's like I'm live. I might as well kind of perform for the camera, So I don't know. I actually probably will start to do a little more. Like I'm right now. I'm trying to project my voice a little bit more. I'm trying to have the loud, like, it's two different feelings. It's like having a loudness coming from your chest, like inside chest around here, which is like not as loud, I guess, and it doesn't project as far. Whereas I'm trying to like have it happen in my mouth. And with that, it's like it's coming from here, but then this is where it really like resonates and pushes out from. And so I'm hoping that's like a little bit louder. And I see like it's kind of pushing into the red occasionally, which is good. It's what we want. It's what we need. Yeah.
D23.
Yeah, we finna be done. So Matter of fact, let's go to uh, um. I don't know. I don't say let's go to something else, but I, I ain't got nothing else to go to. So I'm done for the day. It's past 1. I'm done, and I had kind of fun, but it's late and it's hot, and I'm done. And you're not. I don't know, but it was a good stream today. I had fun. I'm having fun right now. I'm kind of reluctant to turn off, but at the same time, I'm like, I got to get this done. But I don't want to end it like this. I don't want to do it. Face cam. Yes. My beautiful face. My beautiful, handsome face. I will see you all tomorrow at some point in time. Probably like, I'm going to say like 12. Maybe. Possibly, sort of. I don't know. I'm going to say like 12. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to say 12. And then we'll take it from there. Maybe I am on 12. Maybe I'm not. It's a mystery. You'll never know. But, oh yeah, have a good night. Peace. Watch my stuff. Send me money. I would like that. Thank you very much. Good night. And y'all can still hear me because I haven't turned off the mic. And mic off now.